absolutely unobtainium. Those Linderhof Tactic and now Watana uniforms are very hard to find. Well, not in reference photos, because especially if you're a KSK reenactor who wants to focus on that 2015 to 2017, 2018 timeframe, you need to get the Linderhof Tactic Speziiell uniform set. It is something that is so iconic and tuned in to this era of Commando Speziiell crafted impressions that when you're looking at any stateside reference pick, it's hard to see them without. Of course, you do have multicam on deployments and some other uniform variants here and there, but the KSK and KSM were all issued these super rare uniform sets. And for all of those impressionists out there, this has been a very hard point to hit. We've seen independent manufacturers try to do their own. Reputable gear makers like Roman Kermaz get reamed out in the comments for not having original fabric. And HB Tactica almost hitting the mark, but failing pretty spectacularly. But finally, in 2026, this dream of having a whole bunch of Speziiell reenactors look like they're in the Magdeburg photo sets is right there, and finally a reality for so many LARPers. That's right, today on the Gear.Locker, we're talking about a new and improved KSK uniform set. If you guys remember back in 2014, I reviewed a set of pants that I purchased with my own money and was kind of harsh on them, and justifiably so. While they had some great accuracy points, there were plenty of issues with them. And these were from HB Tactica. Now, since that video released, while they did sell them publicly, they've made a huge update to them, and that's what we're gonna take a look at today. Now, full disclosure, through Clutch Precision, HB Tactica reached out and wanted me to give my opinions on this set. And these are my opinions and showcase that I can share with you guys. And the best part is, I have an original set of these, so I'm not only gonna be able to compare, but there's no holding back. As my promise to you guys, I ensured that I was able to give my honest and unfiltered opinions. They requested that I at least check out some parts of it, which we'll get to later in the video, but everything you hear is unfiltered, unpaid for, and genuine. And you guys know me. We're counting stitches tonight. You'll of course see all of my complaints with these later on, but I might have a way to fix them, and we'll get to it. Regardless, let's jump into talking about this interesting uniform set. In addition to doing a side-by-side comparison, we're gonna check out the deep nitty-gritty features. And as much as I'd like to start with this shirt, which we'll get into in a little bit, let's talk first about the pants, because those are actually what I reamed out in the last video. Now these are the Speziiell combat pants. You can see the combat shirts pop up once in a while on the secondhand market, but these in non-ginormous sizes are actually pretty hard to come by. When the reproductions came out, I was excited, but I still had a few issues with them. Some of the issues involved the spacing on the knees, certain stitch lines being doubled up and not necessarily accurate to the Linderhof versions, like around the pocket, different colors and choice of materials, like with this stretch. But the biggest issue, my God, was it abhorrent, was the color and the fabric that was used. These things looked bright orange, and they were a ripstop material, very thin and very flimsy. As you guys can tell just from my fondling, these already seem to be a bit of an improvement, but we're gonna go step by step and talk about the differences that the old versions had that maybe were fixed on these. Like, number one, HB Tactica actually kept a pretty darn close one-to-one creation of the Linderhof ones again. I was super impressed with their spacing of the general pockets and the zippers and the knee pads. All of that looked pretty decent. But again, above the knees, there was like no space. I would say maybe 6 millimeters. And they extended it a little bit this time. It's still not as large as my originals, which we'll bring up in a second, but it definitely is a lot longer. So already that is a bonus. The next thing that I mentioned were some of the stitch lines. Like one of the ones that I particularly noted was around the pocket. They doubled up their stitch lines, whereas here they finally fixed it and it's only one, just like the originals. The next thing was the elastic up top to hold on to suspenders. And this was still retained from the last version. It is a very bright green and not this dark green, which is kind of the same stiffness, but a little bit more muted. As you can tell, side by side, the Repro ones are still just a tad too bright. Not a huge issue in the grand scheme of things, but of course, something to note. And side by side, things like the pockets, they did not change these, and I'm glad they didn't. Because you have pocket pleating, the two Velcro tabs, the zippers, and the open top flaps, which give you access all to the inside. And the fact that they used YKK zippers, which I believe they did on the last one, but they maintained it on this one, and they're pretty much spot on. Like color-wise, I'd say the original ones are just maybe a shade darker, but they're really close. And as I'm sure you can tell, the fabric on this still isn't perfect. However, it is an incredibly huge upgrade. This is still very bright, and we're gonna get into how I might be able to fix that later on, but looking at this side by side, you can tell that it's slightly different. Of course, the material is going to be different. If you weren't aware, these are Pyrad material, proprietary to the Linderhof and Matana stuff, as well as some Hixonia stuff now, but it is a fire-resistant material, or fire retardant. But these are just a standard 50-50 polycotton blend. So while they're not perfect with these, they are still a decent upgrade to the last ones. Oh yeah, and remember when I mentioned the fabric was generally an improvement? I really meant it. Take a look at my original versus the reproduction. You might notice something interesting about this spot right here and why I picked it. Notice this blob, as well as the green around it, as well as the black here and here, with the gray and the brown, and then the light green. Yeah, this fabric is pretty darn close to original. In fact, it uses original patterning, with a couple exceptions. Obviously, yes, the material isn't exact, but you'll notice that this green blob is smoother than that of the original. So while it mimics it well, it isn't exact, and that's okay for a reproduction, we can understand. It's kind of hard to beat this unless, of course, you get original material. Taking one more last look at a side-by-side, you can see that these pants are fantastically reproduced, in my opinion. You guys know me, I hold myself to the highest authenticity standards, and I'm honestly impressed with these for being a reproduction. Let's get to the fitment. These pants fit pretty well. Note this, the sizes that are available on Clutch Precision are pretty limited, and I wear a size US 36 waist, and a large shirt generally. So I consulted with Clutch Precision and thus HB Tactica a little bit about my sizing, because I ordered the standard larges in the past and they worked fine. So for the pants, I ordered a size 36, and that actually worked perfectly. Even though the website said the waist size is actually a little bit larger than that, the 36 worked beautifully. But the one I was surprised about was the shirt. Let's jump to that one. The shirt, they actually recommended that I get an XL. And I was very firm in saying, I wear a size large shirt, are you sure? And I'm very glad that I went for the size up. Well, the pants fit true to size. The shirt is a little bit smaller in cut, I believe. But my goodness, I have been waiting for one of these for a while now. The original Linderhof Tactic blouse, not a combat shirt, but the combat blouse, is something that I've been wanting to get my hands on for impressions for a while. It's sneaky, and when you notice it in photos, it's hard to unsee it, but this is a really cool top. And unfortunately, I don't have an original to compare it to side by side. But knowing the care and attention to detail that they put into the pants, from my photo observation as well as my intuition, these look pretty darn good. They feature the two breast pockets with a Velcro opening with a zipper underneath. The collar does have the Velcro tabs to put a breacher hood, and the sleeves feature not only arm pockets and the flag, but a Velcro square and elbow reinforcement. Linderhof and Matana do produce elbow pads to be able to go into this, and they don't include any, which I wouldn't expect them to, but that's something to be mindful of. It's hard to tell whether they're actually there in reference photos, but based on comfort and experience alone, I probably wouldn't run them. Still, this kind of hexagonal reinforcement on this joint is really cool to see. And then you have the Velcro closure on the wrist. And this thing is just super well produced. In fact, I did see this for sale for a while prior to them putting up the pants. And I'm not sure if this was updated in fabric and I just never noticed they had an old version, or this always had this fabric, but through and through, it is an upgrade. And the fit of this is pretty decent as well. Again, I mentioned I sized up for it, and as you can see, I have a little bit of breathing room, but it fits well. I'm able to tuck it in without too much worry. Mobility is fine, and overall, I'm pleased with it. I'm definitely going to be incorporating this into my impressions moving forward. Now, there's two things I want to talk about before we start to go into the next phase of this video. Number one, what are my initial impressions? And number two, are these going to be allowed for KVB? As I'm sure you could tell, my reaction to these is pretty positive. While there are some minor things here and there, like the double stitch lines on the belt loops or the elastic being bright, there is also that looming challenge of getting the fabric right. Field use will undoubtedly get the fabric to look just a little bit more muted like the original. And while this is pretty darn close to begin with, it does still look just a tad bright, as I mentioned. So while unfortunately I can't go outside and roll in the mud because it's covered in 2 feet of snow, I think washing these might be a good enough test to see if any of the color starts to fade, which I would be okay with. But as is, Camperband has a pretty positive outlook on these. While heavy use and washing may actually make these look even better, as of now, these are going to be conditionally allowed with Camperband. If you're not sure who KVB is or Camperband is, that is the premier US KSK impression group. And our primary direct action kit is the 2015 to 2017 KSK loadouts, which is where you see so many of these uniforms being used. And I am super excited to say that they are going to be allowed. But again, I mentioned conditionally. Because these are reproductions and certain other uniform bits are still kosher, you don't need to have these. So what we want to do is we're going to allow guys to run this style of uniform set from HB Tactica, Clutch Precision, the newest models only, the ones that you see here, with the ruling that the rest of their kit has to be absolutely perfect. We're not talking about a basic bare bones kit, just the pouches and the carrier. We want the details nailed. And of course that's always the goal, but we recognize, being in the US, that getting some of this equipment is very challenging. And I'm very happy to deliver that kind of ruling out to you guys, because this style of uniform set from HB Tactica has improved so much since I last saw them. And I am very excited to get these out into the field. So again, if you are interested in joining KVB, or you're already a member and want to pick one of these up, I would recommend it. I think with those minor improvements, which we'll test out in a second, these can be a really positive thing for making everyone look just a little bit cooler and still very kosher. Now, HB Tactica does sell a bunch of other pieces, and Clutch Precision does as well. I'm not exactly sure who makes some of the plate carriers and all that, but they have multi-tarn versions of these uniforms as well as a combat shirt. So not this combat blouse, but you can get the combat shirt itself. I pushed Clutch Precision to see if they'd make a combat shirt version in Flecktarn, and I'm not really sure if they're going to do that in the future, but maybe they will. They do make hats, these aren't issued or anything, but a cool thing that they do produce are some pants inserts. Carinthia made inserts for the Linderhof Tactic combat pants, which give it more of a cold weather rating. And these are kind of interesting, because as you can see, they're pretty short. They're almost like kid size. But they do cut off right below the knees to give you some breathability and the option for boots. Honestly, I'm probably not going to be using these for my impressions, unless I wear that thing out in the cold. And one other thing they boast on the website, Clutch Precision to be specific, is that these are actually IR resistant. Not sure exactly what that means, but got a set of nods and it's dark. Let's test it. With the IR floodlight on, there is no reflectivity of this piece. And with the floodlight off, it's even better. So that's enough yapping. Let's get to washing and testing. Okay, so I just washed them. I'm gonna hold up both pairs of pants at once and you tell me which one's the repro. Ready? Yeah, unfortunately, it's still pretty obvious. Now, granted, I only washed them a couple times with nothing too aggressive, no crazy detergents. So I didn't expect them to fade all that much, but it doesn't really look like they faded at all. What I think these are gonna need is some heavy use. And as it gets warmer and I can actually run these pants, I can give a little bit more feedback on how the color tends to fade, but overall, it still looks pretty decent side by side. It just needs some love and wear. As you can tell, it did soften up just a little bit, which is why I'm wearing the jacket. Earlier before, it was a little stiff, but again, it was new. So I think wearing it and washing it is going to do wonders for this, but I just can't test it long-term yet. That's something that, of course, will come as the video series progresses. So if you've been interested in KSK kits, my recommendation, if you cannot find originals or don't want to spend the money on originals, something like this would be a very good substitute. It's not perfect, and all of the things I mentioned in this video definitely highlight that. But this video also showcases how much progress they made and how many things they did right. I can say I'm a proud owner of these things now, and I'll be keeping them. And again, KVB's ruling is for our guys. If you have a beautiful impression kit otherwise, these are acceptable. And for all the other LARPers out there that are like, oh, but they're not perfect, so I'm not gonna run them. That's your choice, that's totally fine. Camperban holds itself and its members to the highest standard. And one thing that we've always battled with, especially since we've moved from the 2010 to 2013 to the 2015, 2017 impression kits, is getting the proper uniforms. Because yes, they were all issued the Einsatzkampfblues and the Einsatzkampfhosen, and it was fine to run those, but you don't see those in the training references that we use to inform our kit decisions as much as you see these. So until these become readily available, which I'm not holding my breath, again, these are a solid piece to go with. I want to thank Clutch Precision and by extension HB Tactica for agreeing to do this video. I think it's important that we recognize the positives and the growth in the community. It's very easy to hate on something. It's very easy to pinpoint all of the nasty things that don't make it perfect, but for the vast majority of impressionists and those who care about growing the community, having an easy entryway to go for a lot of people is definitely a positive step. So as always, thank you guys so much for checking out the video. This is the Gear.Locker. If you're interested in joining KVB, check out the description below. I'll have our link to our Facebook group, and that is for US guys who want to do the 2015 to 2017 KSK impressions. This is the Gear.Locker, and tschüss.